Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into a story of just unthinkable ambition, absolute military genius, and a clash of empires that literally shaped the foundations of the Western world. We're talking, of course, about the Second Punic War, which took place between 218 and 201 BC. Now, make no mistake, this wasn't just some minor border dispute. This was the greatest conflict of the ancient world. It was a true fight for survival that brought the mighty Roman Republic to the absolute brink of destruction.
Okay, let's dive right into this by putting ourselves in the shoes of the people who actually lived it. Just imagine being a Roman citizen in the year 218 BC. Your republic is powerful, it's incredibly wealthy, and it's expanding rapidly all across the region. You're sitting comfortably in your city, fully believing that absolutely no enemy could ever challenge Rome. And then, well, a terrifying piece of news completely shatters that illusion. An impossible threat has just arrived right at your doorstep.
The news is honestly almost too shocking to believe. A young general has just defied nature itself. He has somehow managed to cross mountains that no army should physically be able to cross. And he hasn't come alone. He brought with him thousands of hardened soldiers, devastating cavalry, and, most terrifying of all to a Roman citizen who had probably never even seen one, massive war elephants. His name is Hannibal, and his arrival marks the beginning of 17 years of pure existential dread for Rome.
Section 1. The Blood Feud, Rome versus Carthage.
So to really grasp the magnitude of this invasion, you kind of have to understand why it's happening in the first place. I mean, you don't just march elephants over a frozen mountain range on a whim, right? Look at the geopolitical contrast between these two ancient superpowers. On one side, you've got Rome, rapidly becoming the absolute dominant force in Italy, having already proven its military might. And across the Mediterranean stands its greatest rival, Carthage. Carthage was one of the richest cities on planet Earth. Its vast trade networks and legendary wealth were protected by a navy that completely ruled the seas. Now, these two titans had actually already fought once before in the First Punic War, where Rome came out on top, seizing Sicily and costing Carthage enormous territory, prestige, and money.
That humiliation planted a very, very dark seed. There was one Carthaginian commander who never forgot the sting of that defeat, Hamilcar Barca. According to ancient accounts, he took his young son and actually made him swear a blood oath of eternal hatred toward Rome. That young boy, raised in military camps and absolutely steeped in this burning desire for vengeance, was Hannibal. His entire life was shaped by this single, unyielding motivation.
Hannibal learned strategy, leadership, and warfare from a very early age. By his mid-20s, he was already one of Carthage's most respected, intelligent, and just fearless commanders, and he was incredibly ambitious. In 219 BC, he deliberately provoked his sworn enemy by attacking Saguntum, which was a city allied with Rome. Rome immediately demanded that Carthage hand over this rogue general. Carthage, firmly backing their rising star, flat out refused. And with that single refusal, war became absolutely inevitable.
Section 2. The Impossible Invasion.
When war was declared, Hannibal didn't just sit back and wait. He launched an escalation that absolutely no one saw coming. Most generals of that era would have just attacked Rome by sea. It was the expected route. But Hannibal chose a far more daring land invasion. His path was wild. He planned to march his massive army through modern Spain, push across southern France, and then ascend the deadly, freezing peaks of the Alps before dropping right down into northern Italy. Now, the Romans considered the Alps an impossible, impenetrable barrier that would surely destroy any army foolish enough to try crossing them. Hannibal? He decided to try anyway.
The journey was unimaginably brutal. In 218 BC, he set out with about 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and dozens of those famous war elephants. They were constantly attacked by hostile tribes. Food ran out. Men and animals literally froze to death or just tumbled off steep, non-existent mountain paths. By the time he finally descended into northern Italy, Hannibal had lost nearly half of his entire army. Yet, he kept moving. He had achieved the impossible, delivering a masterclass in relentless logistics, and Rome was completely and utterly stunned. No enemy had ever invaded Italy this way.
Rome panicked. They quickly threw armies at him, just trying to stop the bleeding. The result? Total disaster. Hannibal was virtually unstoppable. At the Battle of Trebia, he masterfully lured Roman forces into a deadly trap, killing thousands. The very next year, he struck again at the Battle of Lake Trasimene, where his troops launched a massive ambush against a Roman army that was hidden entirely by fog. The Romans had zero chance. An entire army was wiped out in one of the largest ambushes in military history. Fear and doubt began to spread like wildfire throughout the Republic.
Section 3. the masterpiece of Cannae.
This brings us to a battle from 216 BC that was so flawlessly executed, military academies around the globe literally still study it today. Look at the massive mismatch in forces here. Rome was desperate, so they assembled one of the largest armies they had ever fielded in their entire history. Nearly 80,000 Roman soldiers marched to confront Hannibal near the town of Cannae. Hannibal, on the other hand, commanded only about 50,000 men. Looking at this overwhelming numerical advantage, the Romans confidently expected an easy victory. Instead, they were walking straight into a nightmare.
Let's walk through exactly how Hannibal pulled this off, because it's brilliant. Step 1. Hannibal deliberately allows the center of his own line to retreat. Step 2. The massive Roman army takes the bait. They push forward aggressively, completely believing they're winning the day. Step 3. As the Romans push deep into the center, the Carthaginian troops on the outer edges swing in and surround them on both sides. Finally, Step 4. Hannibal's cavalry, having already defeated the Roman horsemen, swings back around and attacks the Roman infantry from behind. The jaws of the trap just snap shut. The Romans are entirely surrounded.
What followed wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. By the end of the day, between 50,000 to 70,000 Roman soldiers lay dead on the field. Think about that staggering number for a second. Some estimates suggest the casualties were even higher. Cannae remains one of the greatest battlefield victories in all of human history. It's a terrifying historical lesson in how overconfidence against a brilliant strategist leads to absolute ruin. Rome had never, ever suffered a defeat so catastrophic.
Section 4. How Rome Survived.
After Cannae, everyone expected Hannibal to march directly on Rome and just end the Republic. But he faced a massive logistical problem. He lacked the siege equipment and the reinforcements needed to actually take a massive walled city. And the Romans, well, despite their horrific losses, they stubbornly refused to surrender. Instead, they fundamentally changed the rules of the game. Led by a guy named Quintus Fabius Maximus, they adopted what we now call the Fabian strategy. This perfectly illustrates a universal lesson in resilience and strategy. How do you beat a superior tactician? You simply refuse to fight him on his terms. Rome completely avoided large battles. Instead, they engaged in war of attrition, harassing Hannibal's forces, cutting off his supply lines, and slowly, painfully wearing him down over the years.
Section 5. The Counterpunch. Scipio Africanus. While Hannibal was bogged down in Italy, the war expanded all across the Mediterranean, into Spain, Sicily, and North Africa. And out of this widespread chaos, Rome found its counterpunch. A brilliant young general named Scipio Africanus emerged as one of Rome's greatest military minds. He started by successfully capturing key territories in Spain, significantly weakening Carthage's position. But then, he proposed an incredibly bold, almost unthinkable plan. Instead of continuing to just throw men at Hannibal in Italy, Scipio argued that Rome should take the fight to the enemy's home. He proposed attacking Carthage directly in North Africa.
The Senate eventually agreed, and in 2004 BC, Scipio launched his invasion of North Africa. This strategic countermove was absolutely brilliant. Carthage was suddenly thrown into a state of sheer panic, facing a direct threat to their capital. Desperate to defend their city, the Carthaginian government recalled their greatest weapon. After nearly 16 years of terrorizing enemy soil, Hannibal was finally forced to leave Italy.
Section 6. The Final Showdown at Zana. History's two greatest commanders were now on a direct collision course. In 2002 BC, Hannibal and Scipio finally met on the battlefield. But this time, the advantage belonged to Rome. Scipio had spent years carefully studying Hannibal's tactics, and he was ready for him. When Hannibal unleashed his terrifying war elephants to break the Roman lines, Scipio executed a perfect counter-tactic. He ordered his soldiers to simply open lanes within their formation. The elephants, naturally following the path of least resistance, charged straight down these lanes and passed harmlessly right through to the back. Then, taking a page right out of Hannibal's own playbook at Cannae, the Roman cavalry returned from driving off the Carthaginian horsemen and attacked Hannibal's army from the rear. It was a decisive Roman victory. For the first time, Hannibal had been truly defeated.
The immediate aftermath was total subjugation for Carthage. The city was forced to formally surrender. They were stripped of their vast territories, their legendary wealth, and their military power. The great general Hannibal survived the war, but he was forced to spend his remaining years living in exile, though heavily respected by the very Roman generals who considered him the greatest commander they had ever faced.
Just look at the sheer scale of the historical impact here. The Second Punic War didn't just end a rivalry, it changed history forever. Rome transformed from a strong regional power into an unstoppable Mediterranean superpower, directly paving the way for the mighty Roman Empire that would dominate the world for centuries to come. It also gave the world a legendary commander whose daring Alpine crossing and brilliant tactics at Cana are literally still required reading for military leaders across the globe over 2,200 years later.
This was far more than a conflict between two ancient nations. It was a desperate struggle for the very future of the ancient world. For years, Hannibal stood right at Rome's doorstep and nearly achieved the impossible. Yet, Rome endured, and the course of human history was set. But I really want to leave you with this provocative thought. If the trap at Cannae had completely broken Rome's spirit, or if Scipio had never launched his counter-invasion, if Hannibal had actually won, the entire Western world we know today might have looked completely different. What language would we be speaking right now? What laws would we follow? It's a fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the forces that shaped our world, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more epic history explainers. See you next time!